minute or so as people arrive. See lots of familiar faces and names there, so thanks again. Good to see a lot of you again. Some of you who've, I think, been with us pretty much since Monday morning when me and Ben and Nick kicked things off for our AATitude Festival. So welcome, good to see you all. Thanks for joining us. Just give it another 30 seconds as people arrive. So if you keep yourselves on mute, there is a chat box. I can see people already saying hello in the chat boxes. Got a couple of our other colleagues. I can see Suzanne in there. Hi, Suzanne, Rianne. Got a few, in fact, Zoe, who is actually from the AAT. Hi, Zoe. Marvellous. Is that blouse or a dress? But marvellous. I like the flowers there. You're trying to take me on the fashion stakes there, aren't you? Well, without further ado, let's get into our session. We've been running things all week for this, our first inaugural, and I suspect we'll do it again because it's gone very well, but our inaugural online AAT festival, AATitude. We've been running each lunchtime kind of what we've called headline sessions with a variety of really interesting speakers. We've had actually people from the AAT, we've had experts in distance learning, we've had some sort of success stories from yesterday. We had a managing partner and a financial controller talking, just trying to give a bit of inspiration, bit of motivation, and I've had a lot of very nice feedback from people attending saying that this has actually helped them to get a bit of motivation back after what has been a few months of limbo for, I think, for a lot of us. I'm really glad that this has hopefully given a bit of study spirit back to students. But I very much wanted to kind of finish the week today by actually hearing from kind of students and recent students, and to kind of hear some of their hopefully motivating, inspiring stories. And in particular, you know, the world of accountancy has a certain reputation for being a bit boring sometimes, which, having trained accountants for 24 years, I can tell you, you know, accountants are certainly not boring. You know, and so we wanted to gather some speakers today who would hopefully prove that. So in about half an hour, about 1 o'clock, my colleague Nick's going to kind of take over to have a bit of a conversation with James Duggan, who has passed his AAT exam, so we'll talk a little bit about his journey. But he had a background prior to that as a chef, cooking at literally the very, very highest level. He will talk about that a little bit later. I won't steal his thunder, but you know, I would love for James to cook for me sometime, just some of the people he's cooked for prior to his AAT journey. We'll hear from James in about half an hour, but in the meantime, we're going to be starting off with a sort of sporting theme, actually, which I think is great, actually, because I can see in the crowd, we've actually got a Paralympic athlete in the crowd. I know we've got a gold medal winning Paralympic athlete watching as well, so hi there. But we've got a bit of a sporting theme because we're going to be starting off talking to Becca. Now, Becca has done her AAT and, in fact, relatively recently finished her ACCA. As well as doing that, I mean, I know the firm that Becca works for very well, and you know, I've heard so many stories about how well she's been doing at work, you know, in terms of her workplace skills. You know, she organises social events, and amongst that, she also manages to find the time to be captain of Cambridge City Ladies Football Club. She went through her studies as an apprentice, and to me, you know, Becca is absolutely the multifaceted modern professional apprenticeships and that AAT can create these days. In fact, Becca was an AAT Apprentice of the Year, and I remember the night she won the award, actually, I was looking up on her table, and Becca was sat next to Mark Farrar, the Chief Executive of the AAT. And somebody as early as she was in her career, to talk coherently and intelligently to the Chief Executive of the AAT, I thought it was just a great signal of the interpersonal skills that she was building at that stage. So we'll be hearing from Becca, and then the other person we're going to be hearing from immediately is Leah Williamson. And I'm really reminded of a story. I was visiting an employer, it's probably about last August, so August 2019, talking to a group of students, and one of them said, oh, I haven't had time to do any studies since Christmas. Now, bear in mind, this was August. She said, I haven't had time to do any of my AAT studies since Christmas. And I said, well, we've got a student and she's doing distance learning. Now, she's passed a few AAT exams since Christmas. She's also won the FA Women's Super League Championship. She won the She Believes Cup in Japan. She played in the World Cup in France. And she found time to study for her AAT exams. So we're going to be really delighted to hear also from Leah Williamson. But for this portion, I'm actually going to hand over to my colleagues. As much as I know loads and loads about AAT, I'm not an expert on football by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm going to hand over to Ben Bowman.
Thank you, Gareth. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. As Gareth says, my name's Ben Bowman. I'm a tutor and one of the directors at First Intuition as well. I've had the privilege to teach Becca over the years. I've never actually been assigned to teach Leah. You study with our distance learning team, and I know Suzanne, your tutor, is on the session today, Leah. But welcome, thank you both for joining us. My first question to both of you, before we talk too much about football, is why choose the AAT? You had lots of different options. Leah, what do you think attracted you to study AAT alongside your career as a professional footballer?
I think for me, the thing that in the end there was no other choice for me, just because of how flexible it would be on this course. It suits me perfectly. I was hoping when I signed up to the course, I was hoping that my football career would sort of take off, and luckily for me it has. But with that in mind, I needed something that would be really flexible with that and fit in with my lifestyle. Obviously I'll only get one shot at football and sort of one career, so I didn't really want to distract from it too much. So yeah, AAT is perfect for me.
Fantastic. Becca, what about you? What led you into the world of accountancy? Because I'm sure when you were at school and college, the world was your oyster. What attracted you to a career as an accountant?
I have to be completely honest when I get asked this question. I did kind of fall into it. The issue for me was I'd done A-levels and I didn't want to go to university. So it was a case of my parents were like, well, you better get yourself a job. I got a job as a finance apprentice for a property investment company. And part of the role there was just that they put you through. I started with AAT level 2 and it just went from there.
Fantastic. So you've obviously got busy careers. Leah, lots of training. Becca will be very modest, but Becca plays football at a very good standard as well. And we actually support Becca's team, Cambridge City, and me and Gareth go along to watch the matches quite regularly and thoroughly enjoy them. So you're balancing study alongside a training schedule. You're playing matches every week. Have you got any hints and tips, Leah first, for kind of getting that balance in your life? How do you manage to find time to study, as Gareth alluded to, when some of our students seem to use that as an excuse to delay moving on with their exams?
I think if you always go back to the reason that you started it and why you're doing it, I have a big thing in my life. I don't really like to waste time. As long as you're doing something that's productive and going to benefit you, I think if you remember the reason that you're doing it, it shouldn't really fall behind anything else. Despite the difference in football and accounting, they're both important to me because I've decided that's what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it. So for me, it's putting aside time that's dedicated to that and doing it properly. I mean, I have missed it, or it's taken me a long time to complete the small amount of exams I have done because of football. But I found it there's no point putting aside time if you don't have the time for it. It's not worth it. You don't get much out of that. You don't get much back from those sessions. So for me, it's setting aside a bit of time each week to focus on it, make it my priority. And then I think then, like I say, you go back to the reason that you started it. It's not really a hardship to be completing your studying. But yeah, for me, it's trying not to just sort of, oh, I'll do that and I'll do that as well. And, it's prioritizing it when it's the right time to do that. For me, yeah, looking ahead.
Fantastic. Becca, what about you? Because you were in a slightly different position. You were juggling maybe even more balls than Leah because you had a day job as an accountant. You're obviously training pretty hard with football. I think you took on a second job to help kind of finance some of the stuff as well, didn't you, as a lifeguard? And you were studying professional exams. That sounds like an enormously busy schedule. What sort of ways did you find time to dedicate to studies?
For me, it was like if you want something, then you make time for it. I was working, but obviously I was an apprentice. And when I was 16, I started out as a lifeguard. So for a period of time, I was doing both jobs just to finance the lifestyle that I wanted, really. The football, I think, for me was a bit of a release away from work and study. So for me, it was really important to have that time out. And it was just about being organised for me. Like, I knew each week what I had to do. Obviously, I had to go to work. That's a non-negotiable. For me, I didn't have to go training, but I really wanted to go training. That was my outlet. And I needed to study if I was going to get to where I wanted to be. So it's just a case of like time management, being organised. And, you know, things do crop up. So occasionally there'd be like, I don't know, social or something like that. And that's the thing that probably had to give for me occasionally. Like, you can squeeze it in, but that's when studying would take a back step. And so, yeah, there comes a point where there might be some additional things that you do have to turn down, but it's only for a short term period.
And keeping the kind of end goal in sight, I think, is very, very important and well worth it for both of you. I think you're being very modest there, Becca. Becca did her final exams just before lockdown to become a chartered accountant. So she's done ACCA, and I was teaching her for her final exam. She sat that final exam, and then I went to see her play that week in a very good cup final that she was playing with a bumper crowd at the Abbey Stadium in Cambridge. And I took my daughters and their girls team to watch and cheer her on. And the mums and dads were amazed that this lady on the football pitch was dominating the team. She was captaining. You won the game easily. And I said, you do realise she did the most important exam of her professional life earlier this week? I just think that's fantastic, Becca.
Yeah, I think that was just luck with the timing, because my final exam was the day before the cup final. Had it been the other way around, then I don't know what might have happened in that exam, but yeah, just luck.
And celebrations on both counts, because Cambridge City won the cup and you qualified, albeit getting your results in lockdown. So we haven't had the big celebration and party that we would have had in other years when students get their certificates. We've got that to look forward to at some point, Becca.
Yeah, it's pending.
So obviously both of you, you're super competitive. Obviously on the pitch, it's all about winning. How do you think any of those skills transfer to study, to accountancy, and have helped you with your kind of preparation for exams? Leah, any ways that your skills on the pitch have transferred over?
I think so. I think, I don't know if not, we're just guilty of it in football, maybe because there's so many people watch football, so many people enjoy football, and there's so many critics out there, professional or not. We're always chasing this sort of idea of perfection, which doesn't really exist, but it's a nice sort of, you know, thing to chase and keep you on track. So for me, especially given the circumstances of booking an exam when you're ready for it, if anything, it's probably a downfall for me, because I want to make sure I'm almost perfect by the time I get there. But I do think that whole, you know, I have a career in football, and my goal is to basically see how good I can be by the time I retire. You know, that's the dream that I'm chasing, and to be the best at it. So naturally that transfers into my exams. But I think, yeah, the competitiveness, I think if you don't have that sort of edge to you, then maybe that's where the sort of the slacking comes, or, you know, I'm not quite ready for it, or maybe start to fear things. Whereas I think that maybe the competitive edge, I sort of want to chuck myself into it to see if I'm any good, basically.
Fantastic. What about you, Becca? Anything that you do on the pitch you've been able to kind of transfer into your professional life in accountancy or study?
I think being competitive is like, it's having that desire to win and to do well. So that kind of falls into exams as well, because there's nothing worse than having to go into the office the next day and someone says, how did you get on yesterday? And you lost. It's the same as saying, how did your exam go? Oh, I failed it. I think it's a kind of desire that comes hand in hand across both things. And the other thing I think is like perseverance. Like, there's many times in a football game where you can go 1-0 down, but you know it's not the end. You've got however long to put that right. And it's the same with exams as well. Like, there might be a setback. You might fail an exam, or something might take you slightly longer before you're ready for that exam. But just to persevere and see it out, because it's not over till it's over type thing. As cliche as it sounds.
We've got Zoe from the AAT with us today, and they won't let us do that, but it would be great if sometimes I could have you two to give a team talk to some of our students halfway through their assessments. We've got a glass window where we can see them when they're sitting their exams, and sometimes I look in there and you can just see by the look of them, they look so dejected, and you just want to go in there and give them a bit of a pep talk. wouldn't it be great if we could have a half-time team talk during an exam where you could just come back in, recompose, and then go and finish off the second half? AAT, maybe you could suggest that to the powers that be at your exams.
I'll see what I can do.
There's one of the Scottish Institute exams where they do that, but it's a 7-hour exam, so swings a roundabout.
Yeah, I'm not sure most of our students would be up for a 7-hour exam. But you raise a good point, Becca. I'm sure you won't mind me saying, I don't know, Leah, I haven't looked at your kind of results for exams and your kind of fixture list gone by. But Becca, you have had a few bumps in the road on the way through. You failed an exam in AAT, didn't you? Which I kind of think goes to show we're all human. I failed an exam when I studied. What kind of tips did you have for kind of getting back in the game? Because it's natural, losing, you're not going to win and go unbeaten all season, just like the majority of our students are not going to pass every exam at the first attempt. What did you do to get back in there and resit?
For me, it was my level 4 as the last exam, and for me, each step through the journey, when I'd done level 2, it was just about getting to the end of level 2 and then level 3, and I kind of took it step by step. I never wanted to look too far ahead, but by the time I'd reached sort of that point in my AAT, like I said, it was my last exam, and I think I probably got a little bit complacent. You kind of get into the flow of things, you realise what you can and can't get away with in terms of like study time and putting the hours in and stuff. And for me, I think it came at the right time as well, because it was financial statements, which ironically is what I do every day. That was the one that I failed. But it came at the right time for me because I was then going to go on to do ACCA. And I think it was just a bit of a reality check that actually you can't just breeze through these. You do have to put the work in. And yeah, it's not all that bad. There's lessons to be learned from everything. So
next question, Leah. Obviously, footballers live in the same world that we do, albeit a much more glamorous world, jetting off to play in the Champions League in a few days' time, I understand. But you've been in lockdown just like the rest of the country. How was lockdown for you? Obviously, you couldn't train. What sort of stuff were you doing? Must have been out of a daily routine that you've been used to for quite a few years now.
Yeah, I was ill at the start, probably with the virus, so that was a good start to lockdown for me. Took me off my feet as well, like I couldn't even really go out and train, even on my own or anything, so it really did sort of shake my world up, I suppose. But I was actually really grateful for it. In this time, I've got back on track for my studying, so last year, off the back of the World Cup, I said to Suzanne, my tutor, I'm just going to take a short break over the summer. I'm just going to go and enjoy this experience and get back to studying when I get back. And when I got back, we just went from, like, my life just sort of changed almost. A lot more things became available to me, and I was just really busy with, sort of not turning any opportunities down. So I think lockdown has actually been the best thing for me. I've got back on track for my studying. I've sort of taken some time to myself. I recently moved into an apartment, so just sort of spending time to myself, figuring out what sort of stage I'm at, and having some time to reflect. So I've really enjoyed it, to be honest. And sort of honestly, if I have a spare bit of time, I fill it. And I've obviously not been able to do that because I can't go anywhere. So it's been nice to just chill out. And I like to say the reflection on what's sort of been, and sort of redirecting myself and where my path's going to take me, and sort of planning that ahead has been really beneficial to me, I think.
Fantastic. Becca, what about you? How was lockdown for you? Obviously, you'd done all your exams by the time we went into lockdown, but what was your kind of daily life in lockdown?
To be fair, it hasn't really changed too much for me. I've been working from home throughout, so I think that's been good for me. It's given me a bit of structure. I've been surrounded by a few people who were unfortunately furloughed and things like that, and one of them actually said to me, like, throughout school you have a purpose, and you go to college you have a purpose, and from then you work and you have a purpose, and she was like, I'm getting up now, I'm furloughed, she's like, I don't really feel like I have a purpose in life. And that kind of hit home a bit. I was like, wow, that's a bit tough to take, I think. So for me, working from home, it gives me structure. I was trying to enjoy the weather as much as possible. Again, people around me were out enjoying it all day, every day, so I was a little bit envious of that. Yeah, and just like it has given you a bit more downtime, and I think things that we have taken for granted previously, we can't or haven't been able to, and it's made me realise sort of what I value and how I spend my time, because when you can't do certain things, it makes you realise whether you miss them, whether you don't. So.
Fantastic. So looking forward, rest of this year, Leah, back training, obviously, jetting off to the Champions League soon. What's the rest of 2020 got in store for a professional footballer for Arsenal and England?
Yeah, so I mean, we had the Olympics was obviously meant to be this summer. It's been postponed till next year. So sort of like I feel quite grateful actually. Like I've got this sort of extra time been given to me to sort of just make myself better, and that'll be the goal, the same goal for 2020 for me. I mean, I hope it's busy. I hope it's, you know, we were speaking a bit earlier. I am quite anxious about everything, and I think it's really normal to be. You know, nobody knows how to do life after lockdown because nobody's ever had to do it. So it's just sort of, I don't want to lose sight of what I've sort of, you know, figured out in my own head over this period of time, and I just hope that the plan, like I say, I'm quite a planner, quite a logistical person and a logical person, and I think hopefully I can tick some boxes as I'm going along. So I've made quite an ambitious plan for myself this year.
Good for you. And as far as study goes, where does study fit into that plan? Are you going to get to the end of a level this year?
Yeah, I'm hoping so. Get this next exam done, and then hopefully, you know, get the next one done by Christmas. So it's all part of the plan, like I say.
Which one are you currently studying, Leah?
I'm only on my third exam of level 2, so bookkeeping transactions, I believe it is. So yeah, I've got a couple of mocks done. Suzanne, I don't want to big myself up in case she's sitting there thinking that, oh no, she's terrible. I think I'm ready to go. So we'll see.
Good for you. Well, good luck in your studies. Good luck for this season. Let's hope that we do get an Olympics, and I'm sure you'll be in the squad if we do. So best of luck with that. I know you're going to have to shoot off because you're super busy at the moment with training. So if you want to duck off, if you want to stay, you are more than welcome. But thank you so much for joining us today. It has been fantastic. I'm sure the people listening have got some motivation from you, seeing how that even footballers can manage some study time in their busy schedules. So thank you so much, Leah.
No, thanks. It was lovely to speak to you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Becca, what's 2020 got for you? No study. This should be the time. And I remember when I qualified thinking, wow, all those hours that I had over the books, I'm going to have to do something else. I had ambitions of learning Spanish, and I've now been qualified for more years than I care to mention on this video, and I still can't speak more than 3 words of Spanish. So those plans went out of the window. What have you got lined up for 2020?
To be fair, I think, like I said earlier, I'm a bit of a step-by-step person. So for me, it was just always about getting to the end of ACCA. I never really thought much further than that. Obviously, that only happened in April, and it happened as we were in lockdown. So in terms of any massive plans beyond that, I don't really have any. All this extra time that we apparently have from not studying, I don't know where that is either. I think the thing is as well, because with ACCA, you sit your exam and then you wait sort of 6 or 7 weeks. It's a bit of a limbo as well, and you feel that time as soon as you've got it. So for me, it wasn't about, oh, I've passed my exam, like I've got all this time. It's kind of like I've already filled that, like, and now I've got my results. So yeah, for me, yeah, I'm obviously working. I'm really happy at my job at Streets. So I'd quite like to progress there and take on a bit of a sort of training role with our other students that we've got there. Outside of work, obviously the football season is starting. We've got a start date in September, which is really pleasing. So I think I'm just going to kind of see out 2020, ride with the waves, and yeah, see what next year brings.
Fantastic. I'm sure it's great to be back training with the team, isn't it? What was it like the first training session you went back to with all of the girls in the team? You hadn't seen each other unless you were on Zoom and stuff, I presume, for quite a few weeks. What was the training session like when you were first back?
Yeah, I think much to the coach's disappointment, it was pretty well, not very productive in terms of football and fitness. It's really weird when you see people 3 or 4 times a week, every week, and then we went into lockdown and we just didn't see each other for, I mean, you have Zoom and stuff like that, and we were doing things online, but it's just not the same, is it? So then our first session back, it was kind of like we hadn't seen each other for, I don't know how long it was, 3 months or so. And yeah, it was just a massive catch up. And you know what it's like when, I don't know, 15, 20 women get together, and it's just, there's so much to talk about, there's not enough time, and the coaches just can't get a word in edgeways. So, but yeah, it's good to be back. We're back in the full flow now. Our season would normally have started this weekend, actually. So it's quite nice to have a start date, albeit 6-7 weeks later into the season. But I think it's given us a focus now as well. So we're back in full flow.
It's bizarre, this lockdown world that we're all coming out of. I'm back in the office today, as you can see, because I've popped in. We've got one of our big employers around the corner have got their new starters coming in today for their inductions. And they've got a massive garden, which is really fantastic. So I've been in their garden this morning, albeit the sun's disappeared. Irony of ironies, the week of weather we've had. But it's just a bit weird being around people, albeit at a distance. We were just sitting in a big circle in the garden. But I've come back and I've got a smile on my face. I've seen 3 colleagues that I've not seen since before lockdown who are in today with our exam team doing invigilation. And it is just nice. Zoom's been fantastic, but to actually see colleagues and friends face to face, I think is a different level. So I can only imagine what it was like at that first training session. Great to hear you've got some matches lined up. First Intuition, we're going to sponsor some. I know me and Gareth are super keen to come and see you when you are allowed crowds back. A quick plug for Becca, if you're in the Cambridge area, go and look up Cambridge City Ladies, because my daughters love going to watch the team, and we've had some really good experiences watching the matches. Thank you for joining us today, Becca. I know we are super proud. We were super proud when you were our Apprentice of the Year. We're super proud that you've now fully qualified, and I can only imagine the career you're going to go on and have in accounting, and who knows beyond that. We talked about football management, didn't we? And I think you've got all the attributes to be a stellar coach. I think you're a bit against doing your refereeing course, weren't you? You don't fancy being on the other side.
Yeah, I don't think that's for me. We'll just leave it at that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for joining today, Becca. I'm now going to hand over. It's 1 o'clock to Nick. Good afternoon, Nick.
Afternoon, Ben.
How's things up there with the AAT distance learning team? Is this a busy time for you with regards to synoptic windows approaching again?
It is relentless. AAT has come out. We haven't had synoptic windows for ages, and we had 4 in 3 weeks last month. But it's a good thing. Students are back sitting their exams, passing their exams. We've seen some crazily good results. Yesterday, 22 passes out of 23. So it's going really, really well. So can't complain.
Fantastic. And you're joined now by James. Good afternoon, James.
Hello.
James is a qualified AAT accountant, as well as having a great kind of career story before that, and then a choice to actually go and proactively seek out the AAT and study to change to fit in with kind of your family commitment. So I'm going to hand over to Nick and say, Nick, let's see if we can find out a bit more about James's career and exciting journey into the world of AAT and accountancy.
Yeah, James was actually a student of mine. We had some great fun with tax, didn't we?
I think I loved it by the end of it.
But yeah, James got an amazing, inspiring story. And it is one that sometimes when I speak to people, I do go straight to your AAT comment article and look at James's story and share it with our students just to sort of motivate them. So do you want to start off by telling us what you were doing before you'd even heard of accountancy?
Well, it depends how far back you want to go. Like, we could talk about how much of a jack the lad I was at school and how I didn't quite achieve my potential, I think is the right way to put it.
Yeah.
So I fell into the world of catering, mainly because I got a passion for food and an enjoyment of seeing people's sort of expressions when they're enjoying their food. So I sort of built myself up quite nicely as a chef. I did my apprenticeship at the at Brockett Hall, which, if anybody knows, is a Michelin-starred restaurant. And I was quite fortunate to get an apprenticeship through there. Obviously did all my qualifications as a chef. I then, I don't even know where to begin, Nick, to be honest, because I suppose the best way to summarise it is I've cooked for everyone from the homeless to the Queen, which is the one that everyone always points to. It's not as glamorous as it sounds, as much as people go, wow, you cooked for the Queen. But as I was explaining to Ben earlier, the difference between me cooking for the Queen and maybe me cooking to Gareth, as he was trying to persuade me to do earlier, would be no different. Yes, I got to meet her and things like that, but the quality of the food never changes. But yeah, it was a very very elaborate career. Whether it be working for Red Bull Formula One team, or probably one of the more sort of inspiring and nicer things I did was most Christmases I used to go and cook for homeless people. Me and my team, we would close the hotel that I was at the time, and we'd just go and cook in a community centre and go and cook them a nice Christmas dinner. And we'd all out of our own sort of pocket. So I think that sort of summarises it a little bit. Obviously, there are much more details I could go into, but I don't think we've got the time for all of that.
That was just a nice name drop of the Formula One Red Bull team. Just happened to cook for them.
Well, to be honest, that's probably my more prouder thing. Being a massive motorsport fan, as soon as that opportunity came my way, I snapped at it up. I think I even took a pay cut to go there because I was just like, yes, I want to go there. But yeah, so Formula One teams, the Queen, private jets I even did. Probably the most fun and most difficult one I ever did was I think it was a birthday party on a narrowboat. Particularly interesting given the limitations of space. But it's been fun.
Yeah. So when you weren't jetting around the world with Formula One teams and things like that, what made you start thinking that perhaps this isn't a long-term career for you?
Oh, that's an easy one. So it'd be those two being carried by me in the background. It was my kids, Lily and Olivia. I would go days, weeks, months even without seeing them, and they were really young at that point. And as much as catering and doing what I did was the most amazing career I could have possibly had, it doesn't lean itself towards having a family lifestyle, and I missed them incredibly. Now, something had to give, and the one thing that I could always control was my career. So yeah, it was my children, and that was my biggest inspiration to move.
Yeah, so you had this drive to see your children, and obviously you're working in catering. Why accountancy?
I'll give you the backstory. So I had to go back to college because, as I said, I was a bit of a jack the lad at the school. So I redid my GCSEs in English, maths and science, and nailed maths perfectly and enjoyed it. And it was my tutor, my maths tutor in particular, went, "You've got a real knack for probability and statistics. Have you thought about being an accountant?" And I'll use the phrase that I used on the AAT story. I literally thought that she had had far too much cough medicine, because I was always the opinion of, no, accountants are really smart people. That they've been to university and whatever. I'll never be an accountant. It's not. And she said, and she sort of reassured me, asked me to look into it, and I did. And I went down to one of the open evenings at the local college, and signed up sort of there and then, because all of a sudden it looked possible that I could become an accountant, and it was very interesting. And the AAT in particular was a nice entry point for me to start, certainly post GCSEs. Oh well, post second time GCSEs, I think it's the right way to put it. So yeah, so that it was my maths tutor who sort of pointed me in the direction of the AAT. So yeah, they were my guiding light as such.
So, I mean, this bit is the bit I think is most inspiring, and I always send to my students is there's one thing signing up to an AAT course, another is getting that first role in accountancy. You want to tell us a little bit about that? Because I think this is really inspiring.
So I'll start it with its title, which is always the number 452. I'll never forget that number, and it's to the point where it's my lucky number, because that was the number of applications that I had to send off before anybody would give me an interview. And it was exhausting. It took me quite a considerable amount of time, to the point where I did AAT level 2 whilst still in catering, because obviously I couldn't go out of the job. So I had to aim and try and get a job. I was fortunate enough that on the 452nd attempt, HW Fisher gave me an assistant trust accountant role, a sort of trainee role, and the rest, they say, is history. But yeah, 452 is the number of applications. And the question that people always ask me is, why did you keep on going? And the simple answer to that is, I've always lent myself towards the sort of cliche that it doesn't matter how many times people say no, you only need one yes. So, okay, I had 451 no's, but that one yes changed my whole lifestyle. So the 451 no's are irrelevant to me.
Yeah. And was there any point where you thought maybe accountancy is not for me? Maybe I'm staying catering?
I'm going to say no, because I was passing exams at that point. And, you know, as long as I studied hard and I put the effort in, you know, I kept passing the exams, and my belief came from that. So it was the case of, well, if I'm passing the exams, I must be good enough. So it was the confidence building as I was going along. Don't get me wrong, you know, every rejection does take its toll on you. But I kept passing exams. So there's sort of, you know, there was that nice balance. Well, I wouldn't say a nice balance, but it was the balance of, for every rejection, I had a bit of a confidence boost. And I just knew that, you know, I needed to have a chance of somebody. And that's where my CV had to be quite creative as well. So as an example, not many people believe it, but there are a number of transferable skills from being a chef to being an accountant. So I just had to really hone in my CV to show people that actually what I can do, what I have passed, and what I have done in the past can be used in this future career.
That's actually really interesting. Gareth and I hosted a summer school on Tuesday afternoon for school leavers, generally people looking to get into accounting. It was about transferable skills. So rather than saying I work on a till in Tesco's, it was I'm very good at dealing with customer complaints. I'm customer facing. What transferable skills did you use to get your first role?
So as you can imagine, every time you place an order for you know, to a supplier or something like that, you would ascertain that how much is that going to cost. So then you could then look at the, you know, things like budgeting, because certainly we're all in business for the same reason, which is to make money. You know, you can analyze profits and profitability based on dishes and things like that. So we would do sort of, without even me realizing that I knew what a cost benefit analysis was, I was already doing it as a chef, you know, analyzing every part of a dish and the overheads involved. And then going, right, well, you know, we need to make a profit on this. How much do we want to make? So, and again, you know, much like the people working in Tesco's, you still have to have, you know, good interpersonal skills. You know, it was an odd one because I'd gone from quite a senior leadership role to quite a trainee role, but I could show that I could work well within a team. You know, I could handle myself in difficult situations, because as you can imagine, in some kitchens, it's it's certainly stressful, and certainly this week. I really wouldn't want to be in the kitchen this week. I don't know how those poor guys have done anything in the kitchen this week. I would have been on the floor just in a pool of sweat, I think. But you know, you can strive in difficult situations. So there's sort of 4 or 5 that are just coming off the top of my head. I'm sure I came up with at least a dozen when I was trying to get my CV to align.
Yeah. Now, I've got to ask, what was the feeling like when you've got that first job? And was the first day as you expected?
The first day was as I was expected, but that's purely because of what I had done to enhance my CV previously. So I'll come back onto how I felt when I got the job in a second, but to get the role, what I actually did was I took 2 weeks annual leave when I was a chef to go and work in the accounts department for the company that I was working for. Just basically shadowing people, getting an understanding, and more than anything, getting an understanding for what it's like to work in an office. Because as you can imagine in a kitchen, as you know, Gordon Ramsay has alluded to, it's quite blue, and some of the terminology used can be not very office appropriate, shall we say. And yeah, and some of the camaraderie is it's not very office appropriate. So I had to learn how to behave in an office. But yeah, the 2 weeks in the office sort of led itself to just give me that experience I needed. And again, something I can add to the CV that, look, I did this to get to where I want to go. So it showed that I had that determination and sort of strength and character to carry on. Now, I'm not ashamed to answer your second question. I cried, is the best way to put it, because I knew I'd made it. You know, it didn't matter that it wasn't quite an accounting role, it was a trust accountant role. I'd made it into an office scenario in the financial world. I was on my way, and the relief was just, it was immense. So as you can imagine, you know, when I got the yes, and I put the phone down, and yeah, my wife hugged me, and I cried on her shoulder with the immense relief that I've done it.
Yeah, that's amazing. So moving on, once you got into accountancy and once you got into your studies, did you meet any other further roadblocks along the way?
Business tax is probably the biggest roadblock I ever had, as you well know. Yeah, I always did, actually, because I think it took me a while to acclimatise to the office world. You know, certainly when I was working at H.W. Fisher, I struggled to get to grips with the way of working and the way of the land, because you know it's difficult coming from, you know, being one of the best in your field, you know, people looking to you for help and guidance, and then you looking to others for help and guidance. And that was something I really struggled to acclimatise to. So that was probably one of my biggest roadblocks, was getting used to life in that world. And that took me, I would certainly say, sort of, you know, my first 2 jobs were the learning experience, and it wasn't until my 3rd job in accountancy where I actually strived and I had the right finance director above me to give me the guidance that I needed. But the other roadblock, and I imagine you still remember the struggles I had with it, Nick, which was business tax in AAT. So much more to what Gareth was talking about earlier, and Gareth and Ben were talking about earlier, and you know, just to support Becca's cause earlier, I failed an AAT exam. I failed business tax, and I failed it 3 times. And then that was when I sought after Nick through the AAT Students Forum, which I can't promote enough. That group, when I started my AAT, I think it was only about sort of 50, 60 people strong. I now think it's got a good few thousand in it. It's huge. But yeah, Nick sort of found me on that group and just went, well, why don't I teach you it? And you know, straight from there, if you consider it a first attempt after meeting Nick, I passed it. So it just shows that even though you might be struggling a little bit. Sometimes a slight change of direction may have massive benefits.
Yeah, I remember marking those mocks, and the goal was always, if it's not 100%, I leave myself open. That next time it will be a pass first time. Yeah, and it was, wasn't it? It was.
Yeah, it was. I even remember the score coming in, and I just remember going, well, actually, that's quite low. And I was disappointed that I passed so low after all the mocks that I'd sent to Nick, and going, Nick, if this isn't 100%, please explain why. And then I think I passed with, it was quite a low pass, but I remember Nick just going, you've passed it. You've got over the hurdle. What are you worried about, man?
Yeah, I remember that Thursday morning. It was like F5, waiting for that result to come through. So, do you want to talk to us a bit now where your career in studies have taken you now?
So now I work for a defence company, and I'm a project accountant for our land and naval sector, looking after £500 million contracts. And yeah, I've been doing that since January this year. It's been a huge step up in my career. But my career, I've never been one to sort of nail your mast to your ship, as the old phrase go. So previous to this new role, I was doing internal audit. Now, most people, when you say the word audit, sort of shudder a little bit. Nick's probably shuddering as we speak. But actually, I would say audit is a very enjoyable thing to do, and it gives you great exposure to all parts of the bit. Don't shake your head, Nick. You know I'm right. It gives you exposure to all parts of the business. Whether it be financial or operational, I was doing all kinds of audits, and it gave me a real good understanding and scope to the business. And it also, gave you an appreciation from other stakeholders as well. Trying to understand what they're looking for from the business. So if we summarize it, I started in trust, then I went to a local practice, then I went into sort of the commercial world, then did credit control, then I did all the ledger work, then I built myself up to a finance manager, then it was internal audit, and now I'm a project accountant. So I have sort of bounced around everywhere to get to where I've gone, but it's given me a greater appreciation for the wider market.
Yeah. So that's where you're now. Going forward, what's the plan for the next year? What have you got lined up?
Well, I've got a child coming next month, so that's most of my time taken up. But in the long term, I'd actually quite like to study tax, much to my previous sort of failings. But I think what it is because I struggled with it, I want to get a greater appreciation for it. So I think long term, I don't want to look at my roles and things like that, because I don't think you should ever sort of disbar any opportunities that come your way. If internal audit was to come in a different company and I'd never done it before, why wouldn't I have a look at it? It's worth its consideration. But in terms of my studies, once CIMA's almost finished, then I'll probably look at something like ATT, because I have got since AAT, my love of learning hasn't disappeared, and I get bored. I get bored really easily when I don't learn, to the point where much like Ben, once I passed AAT, I was like, well, what do I do now? Do I do CIMA? And I decided, no, I'll put off CIMA for a while. And then 3 weeks later, I was learning to play the piano because I got bored.
Yeah. I'm just conscious of time because I want to leave time for questions. But if you had any advice for, well, especially my distance learning students, but everyone generally, about people who are looking to get into accountancy and are struggling, what would you say to them? Don't give up.
If my stories taught anyone anything, you don't need a million no's. What you need is one yes, and it doesn't matter how many times people say no. You'll get there. You just got to believe in yourself. I know I've probably rolled out good 3 cliches there, but there is no way that anybody should let you give up on what you want to achieve. So, 452, if you can remember that number, and if anybody beats it, please let me know, because I'll be in awe. It's not a competition, but I will commend you for that.
Yeah, it is an amazing story. It really is something I turn to time and time and again and say, look what James did. Don't get down. It will pay off. Don't get disheartened.
If I'm honest, I think it was more to do with my stubbornness than anything else. But yeah, it paid off, and I haven't looked back. I've had quite a successful career in finance now, and it's just because I didn't give up. And I suppose the other cliche, and probably one of my favourite phrases in the whole world, is even when you fall flat on your face, you're still going forwards. And if you look at that, it's, you could throw all the cliches in about failing an exam or something like that, but it doesn't matter if you fail an exam. You've put in all the hard work. It just means you've got to get yourself up and try again. A bit like, riding a bike. If you fall off, get yourself back up on it. You will be fine.
That was fantastic, James. Really, really inspirational, and a great story about why you chose to go into accountancy, but you're obviously really suited to it and very good at it. And I'm a big auditor myself, so my background's in audit, so I'm 100% high-fiving you virtually for team audit on that one.
I loved it.
Interesting the parallels between you, James, and then Becca and Leah with that strive for perfection, whether that's on the football pitch in your training, whether that's you with your kind of cookery and making it the best you can be. And I think you alluded to a very good point where obviously we want students to get the best mark they can get, but sometimes good enough to pass is good enough, and the bigger picture is moving forward. And that was a real big kind of takeaway from what you were saying there for me. I'd like to open it up. If we've got any questions from the audience, we've still got Becca with us. So any questions for Becca or for James that I or Nick can field to them, if you want to type into the chat box. While you're thinking of a question, we've also got Stephanie joining us today. Stephanie Millwood, one of our students studying AAT. Stephanie, she is a Paralympian as well. Another really inspirational story and an ability to see how the skill sets for accountancy overlap with lots of other requirements. Stephanie's been joining my regular Wednesday evening sessions where we do a bit of a chit chat with students from all qualifications. So anyone on this, if you've not come along to one of our Wednesday night sessions, look us up. We go live every Wednesday at 6 o'clock. But Stephanie's been really inspirational in the chat box in some of those sessions, talking about her commitment to training. So Stephanie, first of all, super excited. I think you're going to show us a real life Olympic gold medal on the screen. I've never actually got to hold one. Well, look at the box it comes in. So which Olympics are we talking about for these, Stephanie?
Rio.
Rio.
Can you see that?
We can see it. Wow, fantastic.
And listen to this. The gold, silver and bronze all sound different for the people who can't see. How incredible is that?
Fantastic. So you've got a gold medal even if you can't physically see that it's gold in colour. That is fantastic.
And it weighs half a kilogram, so it's quite heavy.
What was the gold medal for? I know you're very modest, but what was the gold medal for? Because we need to celebrate this.
I won 2 golds, one for 100 freestyle in the relay and one for 100 meters backstroke. I did all right. I also won 1 silver, 2 bronzes, but they don't count.
They do count. You celebrate everything.
I think they certainly do count, and you're very modest. And is that an Olympic torch?
Olympic torch as well.
Just kicking around in the room.
I carried it through Liverpool because I was away on a training camp when they came around where I live. So I went through Liverpool and it was amazing. It was so good.
Something I've always wanted to ask an Olympic gold medalist: where do you keep the medal? Or the medals in your case?
Well, this one kind of lives in my car because it goes around to different schools to see everybody. So yeah, in the back of my car. And I was also awarded this. Does anyone know what this is?
Looks like something by royal appointment, so you can tell us, I'm sure.
It's an MBE. I was awarded an MBE because I won 2 gold medals from Rio.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
That is absolutely fantastic. Can I just ask an interesting question? I'll open this up to Becca and to James as well. Obviously, the ladies from the sports side, have you got any superstitions or kind of pre-match or pre-race drills that you've also used when you've been doing exams? And I don't know, James, whether chefs go through a bit of a, was there anything in the kitchen that you had to make sure was right for that meal to go out of the door? But Becca, is there anything before a match that you do routinely that you've kind of taken into the exams?
It's not the same superstition. Before a match, I have to put my boots on in the same order, like right foot, left foot. And also, like, I have to decide what boots I'm going to wear before the game. And even if they're not right in the warm-up, I cannot change them. But going into exams, not so much with AAT, but more when I moved on to ACCA, because, long story short, there's not an exam centre in Cambridge where I live, so I had to travel to Peterborough, which is about an hour away. But I used to stay there the night before, and so I used to never go to the hotel room early. I'd always like get there for like 8 o'clock in the evening or something, because I just didn't want to have all that time sat away from home, not really knowing what to do with myself. And I'd literally just go there, do a face mask and go to bed. And I used to do it before every ACCA exam. And at one point I was like, oh no, like the exam centre that I was using wasn't available. So I thought I was going to have to sit at a different hotel, and it was just throwing it all out for me. But I did get in the end, so it was fine. But yeah, not the same pre-match ritual as pre-exam, but definitely I had a pre-exam ritual.
What about you, Stephanie? Pre-race or pre-exam? Any lucky calculators or lucky equipment?
No, but I do like to be very well prepared. So I need to have all my towels, all my costumes, all my racing costumes, everything, and all my spares with me. So I need to have everything ready so that if anything goes wrong, I've got, you know, some kind of standby. So yeah, I just need to be prepared for it.
So I guess going into exams, you always take a second calculator just in case the batteries fail.
100%. And how many? Like a whole paper, everything, absolutely everything. I have to.
What about you, James? Any quirks or peculiarities from the kitchen that have transferred over?
I didn't have any quirks in the kitchen because I always felt like I knew what I was doing. When it came to exams, I was always really nervous that what if that question came up and I didn't know about it. So I always used to try and sit my exams at about 10:30 in the morning. And what that would allow me to do is that I would sit an exam, regardless of how much previous preparation I'd done, I'd always sit an exam before I went to my exam. That way you get all your exam nerves off on the one that you're practicing. I did always have a lucky pen as well. Nothing special, but it was just a metallic metal Parker pen that always lived on the left-hand side of the computer in the exam room. And if it ever went on the right-hand side, I always believed I'd fail. That's the only weird little quirk I had.
So, wow, warming up for an exam by doing an exam sounds like a proper sporting mentality. I'm sure the ladies are nodding along. It's a bit like going into the training pool, Stephanie, before you went into the real thing, or Becca doing a good warm-up and checking out the pitch. James, while you're on, and the ladies can probably chip in as well, obviously preparation for the exam is technical, doing your books, but actually getting a good night's sleep, maybe with or without the face mask, Becca, I'm not sure on that one, but also eating well and looking after yourself before the exam. As a chef, were you waking up and cooking yourself anything particular for breakfast before your 10:30 exam?
No, but I used in the evening and the day before. I was I've just remembered I do have superstitions, and it was always the day before the exam, and I'd always eat the same thing. So I would always do myself a pasta bake, mainly because it's quick, it's simple, it's easy, and it gets you all of the nutrients that I needed, as well as carbs, which you would need, because as much as people will say that you're just sitting down, well, actually, it's exhausting doing an exam. So you need an element of energy to keep you going. So I did used to carb load the day before an exam, same as a marathon runner.
What about you guys, Stephanie? What was your kind of pre-event but also pre-exam food regime?
Food again. I love lasagna. I'm a humongous fan. Absolutely love it. Anytime, and you know, before an exam, after an exam, just know that I'm having a lasagna. I'll be good, and I'll be ready for the exam. Amazing, or for the swim. Good.
Becca, any tips on looking after yourself before the run up to a match or the exam?
No, I actually don't. But on that note, in terms of like exam preparation, some people may disagree with me, but for me, it was a case of like when you get to the night before, what you don't know now, you're not going to know. So I think it is really important to chill out and relax. And for me, it was kind of like when I got to the hotel room, that what I didn't know at that point, I was never going to learn in a stressful couple of hours before bed. So yeah, it's really important to get your sleep, and it's really important, like Stephanie says, to just be organised. Like there's nothing worse on exam day and having stress and thinking, oh, I've lost my calculator, I haven't got a spare one, or my pen don't work, or anything like that. So I don't know, some people may disagree and might like to do a late night cram, but for me it was more about being relaxed and just sort of chilled out and ready for the exam.
Yeah. I would agree with Becca on that, and a quiet evening, or or even socializing, just to take your mind off everything, because you'll be surprised how much you've already retained previously. I know I did the exam in the morning, but that was just to get rid of my nerves. So, but yeah, certainly the night before, you just need the best night's sleep possible. So don't try and cram it into 1 a.m. It's not worth it.
I've actually seen in the chat box that Sarah asked, how do you deal with the wait for results? For me, it's similar to what I don't know now, I'll never know. It's like once you leave the exam room, there's nothing you can do to change that result. So there's absolutely no point in stressing about it. It is what it is. So for me, again, personally, there was no point continuing to study that module, because I think you always need to be positive and sort of come out thinking you are going to pass it. And if you don't, then you kind of tackle that bridge when it comes to it. What's the point in stressing for 6 weeks over something that might not even happen? So yeah, the wait for results was kind of, I'd almost forget about it as soon as I come out of the exam, and almost forgot everything that was part of that exam at the same time. But yeah.
I almost think that feeling there of coming out of the exam room and knowing that it's just out of your life, there's literally nothing you can do about it, is nearly as good as when you pass it. And as long as it's gone relatively well, it's just a big relief taken from your life. You've had all these weeks of preparation and it's just gone. And it's almost like, the chains are taken off you. I loved that feeling when I was studying.
Yeah, to answer the question directly, I would just say go and do what you love. For me, I used to fill that 6 weeks with a lot of rounds of golf. I just disappear and go and play golf. Not interested. When the result comes, then I'll be interested.
Fantastic, guys. Time has got away from us, as I knew it would, with such a fantastic panel of guests. I'd like to thank Leah, although she's gone off training. Becca, thank you so much for your contributions today. Good luck with the rest of your season and the rest of your fantastic career now you are a chartered accountant. Stephanie, all the best for you. Thank you for joining us. Fantastic to see the medal today and hear about some of your preparations for the Olympics and for your exams. And James, what an inspiration you are. Well done. I think you've found what you're going to do now for, well, I was going to say for the rest of your career, but who knows with you? You might have another change of direction. Maybe a concert pianist is not a million miles away from where you might end up.
Knowing me, I could be an electrician in 5 years.
Guys, thank you so much for joining. This is the last of our lunchtime sessions. There is one more session for our Attitude Festival. You can join me, Nick and Gareth again later this afternoon. Nick, we're back at 5:30, is it?
5:30 till 6:30 this evening, yeah, to round it off.
Fantastic. I've got to go, so I will leave you with Nick. If you've got any questions in the chat box, Nick can still field them, but I've got to shoot because I've got another meeting to go to. Have a nice afternoon. I hope you've enjoyed our Attitude Festival. We've got further AAT revision sessions running for the rest of this year. I've got my regular student forum every Wednesday, so keep in touch with FI, and I will see you all soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, just like to say thank you again to our panel. It has been the best session. I can't promise tonight's will match anything like this, but we'll do our best. Like Ben says, we've got our revision sessions, which I'll put the link in the chat box. They're free and open to everyone, and we are running them until the end of the year at least. So yeah, thank you for joining. if you would like to see us again at 5:30, that would be fantastic. But if not, have a great weekend, and we'll see you at some media channels. We'll do loads of Facebook Lives. We've got Ben's Zoom, and we've got our revision sessions as well. So love it. Have a good evening, and we will see you at some point.